Slight spoilers for Wano and Egghead, but in One Piece there are three types of devil fruits. We have Paramecias, Logias, and Zoan. Of these three main types, there are two of these types that have subtypes, because we have special Paramecias, of which we don't know what they are exactly, as we have not been given a formal definition, but there are videos on the channel explaining what I think they may be and how many we may have in the series at this point. And then we have Zoans with the ancient Zoan fruit subtype and the mythical Zoan fruit subtype. However, based on the trajectory of the series so far, the mythical Zoans have the floor as the special subtype of the Zoan fruit category, because they are basically a 2-for-1 sell on powers, as the user can both turn into a entity and then have Paramecia powers on top of that. So that is why mythical Zoans are looked upon as some of the most formidable Dofra users in the series so far. However, when we come down to Logias don't have a subtype attached to them. However, and we've talked about this on the channel in a few videos now, but I do think there is a such thing called a Primordial Logia, someone with the power of a force that has existed in the One Piece world for a very, very long time. So on this list, as we've talked about before, I think darkness is there, gravity is there, and magnetism is there. What got me on this case is that when you look at Blackbeard, he explains that his darkness is gravitation and that he has dominion over all other devil fruits because he can simply touch a devil fruit user and turn their abilities off, which puts me in the frame of mind that darkness must rule over all elements to a degree in order for him to have that ability. And another thing that's so interesting about Blackbeard is that, unlike other Logias, he cannot turn into darkness normally to evade attacks. He actually takes more damage than the average person, as his body sucks in the damage from bullets, bombs, etc. So it makes you wonder, are other Logias like him in the series? Not saying that Logias need to be solid like Kuzan and still avoid attacks. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that, are there others who have human forms that can't shift into their desired element unless certain conditions are met? Because I do believe that is the case for Blackbeard. I think when Blackbeard is in complete darkness, he is able to become darkness and therefore eat the essence of devil fruits, which is why he has so many devil fruit powers, because as he said, darkness devours everything. And I believe that to be true and absolute. Now, when you look at Kid and you look at Fujitora, something interesting arises. They too cannot turn into gravity or magnetism. And you might be saying, well, that's just because they're Paramecias. But the weird thing about them just being Paramecias is that their powers are too boring. Now, what do I mean by calling them boring? Well, with the Magnet fruit and the Press fruit, they simply generate magnetism and gravity. Said magnetism and gravity don't have any additional properties attached to them. The magnetism doesn't turn the metal into gelatin. The gravity doesn't turn the chosen object into foam. There's no weird caveat to the abilities in question. This is very much like Logia type abilities, because with Logia abilities, the user is able to generate an element found in nature, but said element is treated very mundanely. When Eniru generates lightning, the lightning is normal. There are no special caveats or abilities that the lightning possesses. When Blackbeard generates darkness, the darkness is as mundane as he describes it. It doesn't do anything more, it doesn't do anything less, it simply is. When Caribou generates mud, the mud he generates is normal. However, the funny part about Logias is that what they generate is not special. Their bodies are what's special. Blackbeard can turn off the powers of other Delphrid users by touching them with his hand. Caribou's body, when it becomes mud, is an infinite pit of mud, and he can store just about anything within it. Eniru can restart his own heart. Monet can make opponents sleepy when she comes in contact with them with her physical body. So I think there is some sort of hidden ability that Kid and Fujitora have that corresponds to their body in general. I don't know how their powers are going to work, but I think there's something that we haven't seen quite just yet. And another reason why I think they are primordial Logias, like Blackbeard presumably, and not Paramecias, is because with Paramecia fruit users, their powers are always weird. There's always something odd going on. For example, Buggy has the Chop Chop fruit. This fruit initially makes him immune to all types of cutting force, right? But the catch is that he has the ability to fly, because if his feet are placed on the ground, the rest of his body can levitate freely. Why is that? That's a weird caveat. And when you get into Paramecias who generate substances, like let's say Doflamingo or Katakuri, with Katakuri, the mochi is sticky, superhumanly sticky, and that's its special ability. With Doflamingo, the strings that he generates are able to actually attach themselves to people, and he can control those people like puppets. And he can also attach these strings to clouds, which gives him the ability of flight, which is very odd. But see, that's an odd caveat to the ability. What they generate is not seen as mundane. The generation itself, the substance itself, is considered special, but that's not the case with Kid or Fujitora. Kid's magnetism is just magnetism. Even as an awakened Paramecia, presumably, he can just make other things magnetic, which is still kind of boring. It still remains within the ballpark of his base abilities, which is kind of odd considering when you look at Law, even though you could say the same thing about Law, but Law's abilities were already kind of crazy to begin with, but Kid doesn't have that. Which is why I think something else has to be up with Kid and Fujitora. Fujitora is especially weird because he's the only Paramecia in the upper echelon of the Marines as an admiral. Every other admiral before him, as far as we know, was a Logia fruit user. And then when he joined the Marines, he joined with another Logia fruit user in Green Bull. So it's weird that he's just like the odd man out, and his powers are so cut and dry and to the point. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So that's why I think with these two, there has to be something else that we're not seeing. There has to be something else that has to come up. Now, when you're talking about the fruits themselves, we obviously have not seen the press fruit, but we have seen the magnet fruit. Now, what is so funny about devil fruit art in One Piece is that it seems kind of random at first, but the only fruit type that has consistent art throughout all of the fruit that we have seen are the Logia fruits, because the Logia fruits all look like the element that they give out as powers. So the flame fruit looks like a fireball. Even when you look at more abstract things, the darkness fruit does look like a bunch of like sad anime emojis or like a representation of spirits. So in an offshoot kind of way, it is a decent representation of darkness. So it's very weird that the magnet fruit looks like a Logia fruit. It even has a thunderbolt as a stem, which is very odd to me because that is indicating an element, and no other Paramecia fruit looks like that. On top of that, it's made up of a bunch of steel balls with lightning bolts, which is something, again, you don't see with Paramecia fruits. You only see this type of weird representation of a fruit when that fruit is a Logia type. So it's weird that this is the only Paramecia fruit that looks like this. So in terms of art, the magnet fruit looks like a Logia fruit. And I'm willing to bet whenever we get the official art of the press fruit, it's going to look weird in a very similar way. It's going to probably look like a Logia fruit. I'm willing to bet, because so far these are the only two that don't really abide by what paramecias have been for the majority of the story. So that's why I'm saying, based on the art of the magnet fruit and from what we've seen from Fujitora and Kid throughout the series, I think they are the same type of Logia as Blackbeard. I think maybe under certain conditions they can turn into gravity and magnetism, but I don't think we have the full story with their abilities. I think there is something else to be seen there. But with that being said, if you are enjoying the video so far, give me a like, and if you want to see more from me, hit the subscribe button, followed by that bell so you never miss a video. In addition to, could you please hit the hype button, because it really does help. With all that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede Wax.